France. Summer, 1944. A narrow road, covered in dust, tracks of thousands of tanks cut across the fields. An American column moves forward. One Sherman follows another, engines humming steadily. They've been rolling for nearly 2,000 miles, and not a single one is broken down. But just a few miles behind, on the same front, a British Cromwell struggles. Dust. Heat. The engine roars, then suddenly a pop. Smoke pours out of the engine bay. A mechanic jumps out, cursing. The officer slams his palm against the armor. Damn this meteor again. The tanks stop. The whole column stalls. And the front line keeps moving. Why did this happen? Why did the nation that built the legendary Spitfire fail to create a reliable tank? Why did the British Cromwell become a symbol of over-engineered ambition, while the American Sherman crossed half of Europe without falling apart? This is the story of speed, failure, and the brutal truth of war. That it's not the fastest who survive, but the ones who keep going. Part 1. The Birth of the Cromwell. When Britain entered World War II, its armored forces looked like relics from the Great War. Light, fast, but fragile machines, meant for scouting, not fighting. And heavy, slow monsters that could barely crawl through the mud. The British divided their tanks into two categories, cruiser tanks and infantry tanks. One was built for speed, the other for brute strength. But the war demanded something else, a tank that could do both. So in 1941, Britain began designing a new cruiser tank, the one that would become the Cromwell. Engineers dreamed of a tank so fast it could outflank any enemy, strike from the sides, and vanish before the Germans could react. But from the very beginning, things went wrong. Part 2. The engine that broke the dream. The pride of the Cromwell was its heart, the Rolls-Royce Meteor engine, based on the legendary Spitfire aircraft motor. Yes, they literally put an aircraft engine into a tank. It produced over 600 horsepower. The Cromwell could hit an astonishing 40 miles per hour, faster than almost anything else on the battlefield. On the test range, it looked magnificent. The British boasted, "Our tank is the fastest in Europe." But in war, speed wasn't everything. Dust, mud, bad roads, long marches, they destroyed the Meteor. It demanded perfect fuel, precise tuning, and gentle handling. War doesn't offer any of that. In battle, the Cromwell overheated. Oil boiled, filters clogged, transmissions failed, while the Sherman rumbled on for thousands of miles. The Cromwell struggled to survive a few hundred. It was fast, yes, but what's the point of speed if you're stuck on the roadside while everyone else keeps going? Part 3. The Sherman, a tank that just worked. The Americans took a different path. They didn't need a perfect tank. They needed one that simply worked. The M4 Sherman was born out of practicality. A reliable Continental engine, a simple suspension, standardized parts you could swap anywhere. Even the bolts and nuts were universal. One size fits all. The Sherman could drive through dust, mud, snow. It didn't matter. It wasn't the best tank. Its armor was thinner, its gun weaker than the German Tigers and Panthers. But the Sherman won through numbers and reliability. When the Cromwell broke down, the Sherman kept rolling. When the Meteor overheated, the Sherman just kept going. It could travel 2,000 miles without major repairs. And that's not a myth. That's from U.S. Army records. Part 4. The War Against Your Own Machine. British crews respected the Cromwell's speed and low silhouette. It was hard to spot and easy to handle. But they also hated it. Every mission could end in another mechanical failure. Even small damages could take days to fix. In Normandy, the Cromwells rolled side by side with the Shermans. The Americans advanced steadily, one field at a time. The British often stopped, waiting for recovery teams, fixing engines, losing momentum. A veteran from the 7th Armored Division once wrote, Sometimes it feels like we're not fighting the Germans. We're fighting our own tank. Part 5. The Myth of Technical Perfection. The Cromwell was meant to prove Britain's engineering brilliance, but it ended up proving something else. That complexity kills on the battlefield. The Americans understood this from the start. Their philosophy was simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They didn't chase perfection. They built practicality. The Sherman was like a hammer. Simple, reliable, ready. The Cromwell was like a Swiss watch. Elegant, precise, and useless once it hit the ground. Part 6. Lessons after the war. When the war ended, Britain learned its lesson. The Cromwell was quickly replaced by newer, sturdier models, the Comet, then the Centurion, which would finally earn true respect on the battlefield. But the message was clear. Engineering pride without practicality costs lives. Meanwhile, the Americans kept refining their formula. The Sherman's design philosophy, simplicity, standardization, and reliability, carried on through the Pershing and Patton tanks, and it still echoes today. Part 7. The tank that just kept going. By 1945, as Allied forces swept across a shattered Germany, Sherman columns stretched for miles. Engines humming, dust rising, they just kept going. On the roadside sat the Cromwells. Hatches open, engines burned out, crews exhausted. Between them wasn't just a difference in steel. It was a difference in mindset. One nation believed in speed, precision, and design. The other, in endurance, logistics, and simplicity. And in the end, simplicity won. Final. In war, it's not always the strongest or the fastest who win. It's those who can make it all the way to the end. The British Cromwell became a reminder. That brilliant engineering means nothing if it can't survive the dirt, dust, and chaos of war. The American Sherman, on the other hand, became a symbol of something deeper than the ugliest, harshest war of the 20th century. Sometimes the best tank is simply the one that keeps going.